The summer of 1858, London's Parliament was forced to abandon its chambers, driven out not by war or revolution, but by smell. The Thames had become an open sewer, and the stench was unbearable. That's the official story of the Great Stink, a public health crisis that finally forced Britain to build modern sewers. But here is what troubled me when I started looking closer. The infrastructure response was too fast, too coordinated, too precisely engineered for a government supposedly acting in desperate haste. What if the sewage crisis was not the real story at all? What followed that summer of 1858 was one of the most ambitious engineering projects in recorded history. Over 1,100 miles of interconnected brick tunnels, precisely graded to flow by gravity alone, toward massive pumping stations positioned strategically along the Thames. There were 6 enormous pumping facilities with steam-powered equipment of unprecedented scale and complexity, each one an engineering marvel in its own right. New embankments extended London's footprint into the river itself, reclaiming over 37 acres of land from the Thames and fundamentally reshaping the city's relationship with its defining waterway. The official timeline claims this was accomplished between 1859 and 1865. 6 years for a system that still functions today, built with precision that modern engineers describe as remarkable even by contemporary standards. The gradient calculations alone, ensuring sewage would flow correctly across the entire network without pumping at intermediate points, required mathematical sophistication that supposedly did not exist at industrial scale during that era. We are talking about engineering tolerances measured in fractions of an inch across miles of urban terrain. But here's where it gets strange. When you examine the construction photographs from that period, you do not see workers building from scratch. You see them excavating, digging through layers of sediment, uncovering structures that were already there beneath the streets of London. The excavation sites show ornate brickwork, arched passages, and architectural features being exposed, rather than constructed from raw materials. The photography is remarkably clear for that era, preserved in archives that anyone can access. The evidence is undeniable to anyone willing to look at it with fresh eyes. Ask yourself, if Bazalgette was building new infrastructure from the ground up, why do the photographs show systematic unearthing of existing tunnels? Why do the workers appear to be clearing debris from around pre-existing archways rather than constructing new ones from bricks and mortar? The timeline troubles me more the deeper I look at the documentary evidence preserved in London's municipal archives. Bazalgette's plans were officially approved in 1858, but construction photographs from 1860 show work already proceeding at multiple sites simultaneously across London, with coordination that implies years of prior planning and preparation rather than emergency response. You do not achieve that level of synchronized effort across a city of 2 million people through improvisation and emergency measures alone. The precision of the gradient required, the sewers needed to flow by gravity toward pumping stations at exact intervals across miles of urban terrain riddled with existing structures, demanded surveying technology and engineering calculation that supposedly did not exist at this industrial scale. Yet the system worked perfectly from the very start. There were no major redesigns required after construction. There were no catastrophic failures during initial operation that would require rebuilding. There was no extended period of adjustment as engineers learned from mistakes and corrected their calculations. It worked as if they already knew exactly what they were doing, as if they were following a blueprint that already existed long before the Great Stink gave them public justification. Either Victorian engineers accomplished something genuinely miraculous, the kind of engineering leap that defies normal technological progression and should have been celebrated as revolutionary, or they were working with infrastructure that already existed beneath the city streets. They were excavating and repurposing structures already built, not constructing from nothing. And it was not just sewers that emerged during this period of unprecedented construction activity. Look at what else happened in London during these same years. The Victoria Embankment was constructed between 1865 and 1870, reclaiming over 37 acres from the Thames. The official narrative presents this as new land creation, a triumph of Victorian engineering ambition, extending the city's footprint into the river through sheer willpower, industrial might, and innovation. But contemporary accounts describe the process quite differently when you read them carefully. They describe it not as building outward into the river, but as excavating and reinforcing existing structures that had become unstable or partially submerged beneath accumulated sediment over an unknown period. The photographs clearly support this interpretation when examined closely. You can see workers not laying new foundations, but clearing debris from around structures that appear already built. The brickwork they are exposing shows weathering patterns completely inconsistent with new construction. These structures had existed for years before workers uncovered them. Here is what disturbs me most about the Great Stink narrative as officially presented in history books and taught in schools. The sewage problem was real. The smell was undeniably real and well documented. The cholera epidemics that killed over 14,000 Londoners in 1849 alone were documented and devastating in their impact on public health. But the scale of response, the coordination required across government and private enterprise, the engineering precision achieved under supposed emergency conditions, and the speed of implementation across such a vast geographic area, none of it matches a desperate government improvising solutions to an unexpected public health crisis. It matches something else entirely. A planned reconstruction effort conducted under cover of emergency. A systematic excavation and repurposing of infrastructure that was already present but somehow compromised, damaged, or buried beneath the streets of London. Section 2 of 3. The evidence suggests we were not witnessing construction at all. We were witnessing recovery from something catastrophic that the official narrative never acknowledges or explains adequately. Walk through central London today with different eyes attuned to architectural anomalies that most people simply walk past without noticing, and you start seeing things that do not fit the official history of gradual urban development. Basement windows that were clearly once ground floor windows, with architectural detailing designed specifically for street-level visibility and natural light streaming into what were once main living spaces. Doors positioned 3 feet below the current pavement that show no signs of being designed as basement entrances. They have grand proportions, decorative elements, ornate hardware, and the unmistakable characteristics of main entrances meant to impress visitors and welcome them into important buildings. Churches with stairs leading down to entrances, when compared with original architectural blueprints, reveal those entrances were meant to lead up toward heaven and divine light. St. Bride's Church on Fleet Street offers perhaps the most striking example of what I mean by these buried architectural anomalies. Beneath the current structure lie multiple levels of earlier construction, Roman foundations dating back nearly 2,000 years, medieval crypts from the Norman period, and something else that does not fit any standard architectural timeline or construction methodology. The buried levels show sophisticated construction techniques inconsistent with their supposed age and the technological capabilities officially attributed to their builders. The official explanation is that London simply built upward over centuries, each generation constructing atop the last in a continuous process of urban accumulation. That is how cities develop, we are told. Gradual accumulation of debris and construction materials, layer upon layer over thousands of years of continuous human habitation and building activity. But that explanation does not account for what you actually find when you examine these buried levels with care and close attention to detail. Intact buildings were buried rather than demolished. Why would any practical civilization bury functional architecture instead of repurposing valuable materials or clearing the space for new construction? Building materials were expensive and labor-intensive to produce. The buried levels show sophisticated construction with no evidence of gradual filling, no stratified soil deposits that would indicate centuries of slow accumulation, no accumulated debris consistent with centuries of urban development and human activity, just buildings abruptly cut off at a certain level, with new construction beginning directly above, as if the old city simply vanished beneath a sudden tide of earth and sediment. The basement anomaly appears across London with disturbing consistency that cannot be explained by random urban development patterns or independent property decisions across different neighborhoods. Victorian-era buildings throughout the city have first floors that were clearly designed as ground floors, ornate facades with entrance-level architectural details meant to be seen from the street, windows proportioned for street visibility and maximum natural light, decorative elements intended for passers-by at eye level, now partially or fully underground, completely hidden from the view they were designed to command. The standard explanation involves street-level raising for improved drainage after the sewer construction. London needed better water management to prevent flooding and disease, so city planners raised the streets throughout the central district. But look at the photographs from that period with analytical eyes, trained on detecting inconsistencies in official narratives. The raising was not gradual. Buildings were not modified over decades to accommodate slowly rising streets. Entire neighborhoods were excavated and rebuilt within compressed timeframes of just a few years, with no clear documentation of where the enormous quantities of fill material came from or how the logistics of such massive earth-moving were managed using Victorian-era technology without modern machinery. Here is where the investigation becomes genuinely unsettling in its implications for accepted history. The pattern is not unique to London at all. It appears worldwide. Travel to cities across Europe, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Vienna, Paris, Berlin, travel across Russia, travel across North America to Chicago, San Francisco, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, travel across Australia and beyond, and you will find the same architectural anomalies appearing during the same historical period. First-floor windows positioned below ground level, ornate facades buried under later construction they were never designed to support, churches with descending entrances that original architectural plans clearly show were designed to ascend toward heaven, buildings that appear designed for a street level several feet higher than the current surface. The coordination problem becomes impossible to ignore once you see the pattern clearly across multiple continents and dozens of cities. How did isolated cities across different continents all decide to raise their street levels simultaneously during the same decades? How did they all manage to bury intact architecture rather than demolish and rebuild? The logical, practical choice for any urban planner working with limited resources and budgets. This is section 3 of 3. How did they accomplish this massive infrastructure reorganization within the same compressed historical window, roughly 1850 to 1900, without the global communication infrastructure to coordinate such efforts across oceans and continents? There was no internet, no reliable telegraph network spanning the entire globe, no international urban planning organizations sharing best practices and synchronized blueprints, unless they were not raising street levels at all. Unless they were all excavating from the same catastrophe that buried their cities, unless they were all recovering from the same event that deposited feet of sediment across the inhabited world. I want to be careful here because I am not making definitive claims about what happened. I am presenting evidence and asking questions that the official narrative struggles to answer coherently. There is a hypothesis that explains these patterns better than the standard explanations offered by mainstream historical accounts. The mud flood hypothesis suggests that sometime in the recent past, possibly the early to mid-19th century, a catastrophic event deposited massive amounts of sediment across large portions of the inhabited world. Buildings were partially buried beneath sudden accumulation. Infrastructure was compromised or destroyed entirely. Population centers were devastated beyond recognition. What we call Victorian-era reconstruction may have been systematic excavation and repurposing of what survived the catastrophe. Look at the photographic evidence through this interpretive lens with fresh eyes. Buildings with ground floor windows now positioned at basement level. Ornate architectural details designed for street visibility now hidden underground. Entrance-level doorways accessible only by descending stairs that original architectural plans clearly show were meant to ascend. New construction sometimes appears to sit directly atop existing structures rather than replace them. The photographs do not show what the official narrative claims we should see. They show a civilization digging out from something catastrophic, not building up from nothing. The mechanism remains uncertain despite extensive research by independent investigators. Some researchers point to volcanic activity on a scale that would dwarf any recorded eruption in human history. Others suggest unprecedented flooding events, catastrophic weather patterns involving massive storms, or geological disruption that does not appear in any official historical record maintained by academic institutions. What matters is not the specific cause, that may never be determined conclusively, but the pattern of evidence left behind in stone and brick and buried architecture across the world. Something happened that required cities across multiple continents to excavate buried infrastructure and rebuild atop what they uncovered. Something happened that left architectural anomalies too widespread and too consistent to be explained by independent urban development decisions made in isolation. And then there is the silence, the complete absence of official acknowledgement in any mainstream historical record or academic study. Mention buried first floors to most people, and they will offer the standard drainage explanation without questioning it for a moment. Show them photographs of Victorian excavation sites revealing existing ornate structures, and they will insist those must be earlier foundations being prepared for new construction, even when the architectural details clearly indicate finished, inhabited spaces meant for living and working, not foundations meant to be buried. Ask yourself, which explanation requires more faith in unlikely coincidence? The idea that something catastrophic buried portions of the built world and required systematic excavation and reconstruction, or the idea that thousands of separate decisions in hundreds of unconnected cities all produced identical architectural anomalies during the same historical period entirely by random chance? I am not asking you to accept the mud flood hypothesis as proven historical fact. I am asking you to look at the evidence with fresh eyes, unclouded by assumptions about what must have happened. Visit London yourself when you have the opportunity. Walk into the basement of any Victorian-era building and examine the window placement carefully. Look at where the original entrance appears designed to be. Find the photographs from the 1860s showing excavation of the Thames embankments. Read the contemporary accounts describing not construction but clearance, not building but recovery. The evidence is there for anyone willing to see it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. What haunts me most is not what happened to create this buried world. It is what we might not be allowed to know. If 1858, London represents not a sewage crisis, but excavation and reconstruction following catastrophic burial, then the Great Stink becomes a convenient explanation, a plausible cover story for massive infrastructure work that required public justification and enormous expenditure. In the end, the question is not whether something happened beyond the official narrative. The evidence makes that almost certain. The question is what exactly occurred and why we were not told the truth. The year 1858, the year of the Great Stink, a sewage crisis that forced London to build its sewers. That is the official explanation. But the evidence suggests something much larger than we have been told. And that is perhaps the most disturbing realization of all. Not what happened, not when it happened, not even how it happened, but that it could be so completely hidden for so long behind a story just plausible enough that most people never think to question it.